Sounds good. Yeah, but maybe just write down right now on your scratch paper just some of your main anxieties right now, the main stresses, and hopefully we will look at some of those. So thanks to the Patient Navigator Training Collaborative and the Alliance of Colorado Community Health Workers, Patient Navigators, and Promotores de Salud. Our health department is also sponsoring this. And again, these are our learning areas today, is understand a little more about anxiety. Tools we'll be going over, frameworks, nonverbal tools as well as verbal, because our brain has both sides. And sometimes if we're in a very high stress mode, the nonverbal is a little bit better. We'll share some resources for clients and for you. So we're going to go over a lot today, and don't worry about, making everything work. Pick a few things that you think would be helpful. And, if you come away with one thing, that's great. 2 things, 3 things, fantastic. And I'd love to hear from you in terms of what's most relevant, because we want to keep improving these and making them relevant. Feel free to email me. My contact info is on some of the resources. And if there's any leftover questions, we'll also have time for questions today. You'll be getting the slides, you'll be getting a resource list, and this 4-step process I'm going to show you, you'll be getting those worksheets. So thank you for being here. And the first concept we're going to say is active coping is facing into stress. Our tendency is to passively cope. I'll think about that tomorrow, right? But by being here, you guys are doing some active coping right now. So yay. And COVID, of course, is a big stressor. It's a bit of a long-term, or now it's proving to be long-term, a bit of a pressure cooker. This shows the side of things, the side of stress we can't control. And that can be a tough one, usually. And chronic stress is when stress goes, say, up above, if you do a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being high, and it's above a 5, that starts to get into chronic stress. Real chronic stress is, say, a 7, 6 and above. And that can be really hard on us physically and also mood-wise. So anxiety is one way this shows up. It can show up as depression in terms of stress. Anxiety can be distraction, not being present, feeling disconnected. So we're all different in how it shows up for us. But basically, you can rate yourself. Maybe do that right now on a scale of 1 to 10. Where is your anxiety right now? That would tell you a lot, right? So one thing we can normalize for you and clients is high stress is pretty normal right now. It's asking all of us to get better at managing stress. This happens in life anyway. We're going along, things are great, and then boom, something changes. Change is a constant, right? So regular self-care is very important. And when you're better cared for, you care for others more effectively. You've probably heard of the Chinese symbol for crisis. Danger is part of that glyph, but also opportunity. So our danger is if the stress takes us down, but the opportunity is to get more resilient, get better at handling common stress that comes up. This is a great opportunity right now. And life, I'm no spring chicken, so I've seen that happen, that life asks us to update our stress management kit, our tools. And what used to work stops working as well. So that's what this is about today. this is going to be in your resource packet, but it's, just noticing everyday anxiety is normal. And then when it gets to be more of a concern, that would be the right side. It starts to get into the anxiety disorder area. But, we'll have fears now and then. Oh no, what if this happens? What if something awful happens? And there can be realistic concerns. When COVID happened and people started being afraid, that was valid. So, we can see some things are normal with anxiety, but when it starts to get stronger, that's where you might seek help if the tools aren't cutting it for you. So asking yourself, what new opportunities can you take advantage of? So, I know for myself, I recognize that this is stressful and I needed to vamp up some of my coping. And I just kind of checked in with myself. What would be helpful? What have I been meaning to do? What is called for now? Because, this is different. This is a new stress. And I just got a kind of sense for myself. I needed to get more serious about regular meditation practice. So that was one thing I started when COVID hit. So I'd ask yourself too, ask you guys, we're in an extended stress period here. What have you been thinking about prioritizing in terms of your self-care? What haven't you been getting to that would be good for you? What is one small step towards that? And then in terms of COVID or other changes that may come up, we can't do the things we used to do sometimes. So, for example, I loved to swim, but the pool was closed. So what would be some alternatives? And if your clients are struggling, you can do this kind of brainstorm with them. Okay, you can't you don't feel comfortable with, immune compromises, going to, the sports games that you used to love, or to the gambling centers, or whatever sort of public places. What would be some alternatives for that? So that's the good news if we want to look at it that way. It will increase our resilience if we take it head on. All right, here's a body-based tool. And the suggestion is if our stress is over a 6, body-based tools work better. So this is called self-havening. And when we can't get a massage, this may be a possibility. So it's basically a self-massage technique. And let's all try it together. Cross your arms. And then you're just going to stroke your arms from your shoulder to your elbow. Again, this is called self-havening, and there'll be a resource YouTube demonstration link in your list. But one thing, this can be done very quickly. We're looking for fast tools, tools that work quickly. And what I notice for the body-based tools, if it's working for me, I will have taken a deep breath, or a belly breath will happen just spontaneously. So we're going to do that. Number 1 is the arms, shoulder to elbow stroking. And then we go to the forehead here and just go across from the center to your temples. Those with glasses like me have to work around your glasses. And just use the pressure that works for you. The pacing, everything is what feels good. All right. And then the last step of self-havening is under your eyes, go from your nose to your temples. And, I feel my breath, the exhale getting a little longer. Let yourself breathe with that. You can close your eyes for a minute. Let's do one more round. So shoulders to elbows. Breathing in deeply, exhaling. Feels like a hug, doesn't it? And then fingertips on the forehead to the temples there. And then under the eyes, nose to temples. You can try different touch, maybe tapping too. All right, so that's self-havening. And again, it may just have dropped, if our stress was a 6, it may just be a 5.5, but any drop you can choreograph for yourself is positive. With stress management, we're not looking to get from a 6 to a 0. If we go from a 6 to a 5 or a 6 to a 4, that's great. Okay, and then in terms of your patient's anxiety, just to recall, it's easy to feel really pressured when you're working with patients that have a lot of challenges. And their stress, you're sensitive, you pick it up. You want to help, you want to jump in. So we just remind you here, it is not your job to fix it. It is your job to be a collaborator, to be a partner in their care, to be a manager in some ways of their actions. But, receiving and just being there is very valuable, even without having a resolution to their stress or challenges. So let them, share. We do MI training, motivational interviewing, and in that process, we tame our reflex of jumping in and trying to fix it for them. So that can cause us more stress, but, just normalizing with them, anxiety is normal. We'll have some tools for helping with that in terms of, doing some reality testing around their fears. But what is the framework they are holding? In some countries, in some cultures, they expect problems. In our country, we sort of think, oh, if it's a problem, that shouldn't be happening. So what is their perspective on challenges and stress? Some people would say, hey, life is meant to challenge us. It's meant to help us grow. So depending on what your bigger perspective is, that can be important. You could even start sessions with relaxation. As I work with people and we've done some relaxation together in later sessions, that's a suggestion I always love to make, because that'll change the session focus. Say, oh, why don't we start with a centering exercise or some deep breathing just to kind of get here, right? Also, focusing your session, that can be very helpful with managing anxiety and stress. Just saying, hey, we've got a limited time. What would be the best focus? We'll use circle menus that list some, options, and then they get to choose, or you choose together. But, letting them know we have a limited time. Sometimes people are all over the place and there's a lot of different challenges. So we can say, hey, Fred, I'm watching the time here, and I know you wanted to work with this first. Let me bring us back to that focus. So focusing is a big help for you. And also asking what helped them in the past. What were some strengths when they worked with previous challenges? You can gather stories about resilience. Sometimes we'll use examples in nature, from animals, from other clients, sharing stories. That always helps that side of the brain that isn't so verbal. Stories, even though it is a verbal telling, that goes deep into people's beings when we share stories. So on your paper, just write down what is one step you want to take with your stress management, especially if you're feeling stressed. If you're feeling pretty good and you've been managing okay, this isn't as critical. But if you're feeling a little frazzled, what would be one step for you? All right. Now, it's a picture of a view from where I will hike sometimes. So that's a big one for me too. Okay, and in terms of frameworks, this is also important. We have here, again, do we see the changes we're all going through? Let's talk, for example, climate change. Are we doomed? Well, that's one perspective, and it is concerning. That's realistic, right? We could validate the concern there. Will it force us to make positive changes? Let's hope so. So that could be a framework someone holds, right? All right. And this was a Vision Quest article by White Eagle of the Hopi tribe. And there's a link to this also in your resources. But this is quite a view on the current challenges for humanity. So she says it can be seen as a portal and a hole. You could fall into the hole or you could go through the portal. I love that. And so she'll say, if you listen to the news all day long, it makes you low energy and pessimistic, you'll fall into the hole. But if you take this as an opportunity to assess your life and rethink life and death, take care of yourself and others, you will cross the portal. She says, take care of your homes, take care of your body, connect with your spiritual house, your beliefs. And again, that is a big piece that helps people with stress. Okay, and then I'm going to show you the 4 steps. We can walk through this. Basically, the first step in this process is to just list everything that's on your plate. So if you want to do that, we'll do it quickly with you. Step 1, you're leaning into active coping here. What is stressful in your life right now? So just general categories, like for example, if I'm working on weight loss, I'll put, fitness or health. If there's stress in the family stress. If there is stress at work, if the commute is stressful. So just list those general areas under step 1. Step 2 is where you take from here one problem at a time. So let's say the health area there's a health change I'm dealing with. I might say that. In this problem, in this step, you would define what is the problem about this problem. Okay. And then you would write on it what is in your control on the right side. And you're going to split it into 2 columns. What is in your control about the problem? And on the left side, what isn't in your control. So I'm going to show you an example of this, but take a few notes for yourself. And again, you'll have some time to do this at length after our time. I also have on my website an in-depth course on these 4 steps. So, but good fit coping is what we're talking about, what we want to have in our toolkit. And it turns out that the side that the stress is most challenging for you, whether it's in your control stuff, that's one type of coping. Not in your control, that's a different type of coping. So we call it good fit coping when your coping matches the side the stress is most stressful right now. So let's say there's a health change. The stuff you can control is your exercise, your diet, your stress management, right? And the stuff you can't control is you're getting a test. There's genetics you can't control. You can't change your age. These would be the things you can't control. Maybe you are a worrier. So we might put that on the left side. I tend to worry. I tend to do worst case scenarios. So if we try to worry about what we can't control, that's a bad fit of coping. If we procrastinate, let's say, about the stuff we can take action on, that's a bad fit. So there's ways we can cause ourselves a bit more stress than is already there. Here's one example of step 1 for Ellen. And this is someone that had to leave work due to childcare issues last year. So she's about to return to work, but wonders about, does she want to return to the same job? What about COVID? It's still going on. So this is some of what's on her list of the side she can't control. So she's already named, the whole work zone is what she's using step 2 for. And this is everything that's not in her control. Okay. And then what she can control, here's a few things that are on that side. Okay. Oops. So this is there are actions there she can take. Sure, they still might be stressful. Who wants to fix a resume or, do some of these things? Asking for a loan would be a stressful action, but these are just some possibilities. Now, what we notice is she can procrastinate about the stuff on the right. So that would cause more stress. So we might, if she were a client, we might say, oh, what would be a way you can maybe take a step here? What would feel workable for you, right? So the stuff she can't control, though, for example, let's say she worries and she just sees the worst case scenario in terms of going back to work. So we might, what might we suggest there? If she looks at this picture, she might say, okay, I have to watch my thoughts. And we have tools for working with thoughts. Because if you're continually doing doom thoughts, oh no, that is something you can have some stress management tools for. Let's say emotions come up that are really strong. That's also a tool here. But it turns out on the side you can't control, any stress management at all, even if it's not helping the problem directly, is a helpful tool. So basically, the side you can control on the right that we just looked at, that's problem-focused coping. And that's kind of like using your brain, your thinking, your analytical brain. The other stuff on the left side you can't control is more emotion-focused coping. So this is where any stress management can be helpful. And nurturing, or that, the classic recommendation, take a bubble bath, which for some people does not work at all. But, any stress management that does work for you will help that side. Okay, and now let's try another tool. And again, this would be a meditation type of a tool, a breathing tool. So this might be something we use when emotions are high or when we're really worried about something. And it's not something that we feel we can change, but it's something we're working with. So this is the soft belly breath. And just, in general, when you're meditating, you want to kind of get yourself in a good seat, a relaxed but kind of alert spine. Your feet are on the floor, your hands are relaxed on your thighs. And just take a nice breath, a few long breaths. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. And just that in itself starts to signal to your body, hey, she is relaxing a bit here. It must be okay. Belly breathing turns off fight or flight. And this particular breathing just watching the breath, watch it flow down to the belly as it lengthens. First, it starts out up more in our upper chest, but then just let it effortlessly expand. And on the inhale, think soft. And on the out breath, think belly, letting go of any holding or resistance. And we'll just keep repeating that. Inhale, soft. Exhale, belly. We keep repeating that. And each inhale, just imagine your belly being cared for through the breathing. And let the exhale be a release, loosening, making room. And just let thoughts and emotions come and go. They're going to be normal to have a lot of them. Our minds never stop. And that's not a problem. It's just coming back to what you're focusing on. Inhaling soft. Exhaling belly. And just notice the body relaxing a little bit. The belly is our emotional center, so when we soften it, a variety of feelings, thoughts, and images can come up. Just welcome all that. You can start to dialogue with an emotion, but just notice that and meet yourself with kindness and come back to the flow of the breath. Eventually, you might do this lying down. You might put your hands on your belly. You could use that releasing exhale just to let go of anything that's complete. Inhaling soft and exhaling belly. All right. And we'll move on now, but that's another body-based tool. And when your stress is, again, over a 6, those can work well. So that might include exercising or dancing. The havening is a kind of touch. You can do self-massage on your hands or feet, singing, humming, chanting. If you guys have heard of tapping, that's a body-based tool. Doing folds in terms of yoga stretches. Those are very good for body-based stress management. Mental tools would include some of the working with thoughts, giving yourself worry time. That means, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to worry all I want. You could do the exercise of what's the best case right now? What's the best case with my stress challenge? What's the worst case? What's most likely? Usually somewhere in between, right? And then again, the 4 steps class will walk you through that, through the thought work. Another useful framework for anxiety and any emotion that's strong and stressful is to notice, I have this feeling, but it is not all of me. So we have an exercise that's emotional mindfulness, and we will say there, I have anxiety, but I am not just an anxious blob. I have a lot more going on here. Another framework is thinking of stressful times, because these come up as you might look back on your life. You could say, wow, I can't believe that in 2018, I had this go on, that go on, and this. It was the perfect storm of hugely stressful or change, a lot of change in that corridor. So we might call those growth periods. Just know that passive coping, which is avoidance kind of, or maybe using, like, say, TV or internet surfing, games, those would be not dealing with the problem directly. So that would be passive coping. And that does bring stress down, and sometimes that's soothing. But your brain will notice, like, let's say you're saying, oh, I'm just going to think positive. Your brain knows if we're kidding ourselves. It will know that you have something going on there. So the sooner we can do active coping, the better often. It's initially more stressful to face into it, but in the long run, it is less stressful. Passive coping is the other way around. So just watch for yourself what is working well and what do you need to tweak? What can you add to your toolkit for stress? Some regular practices that can be helpful: meditation, of course. Movement can really help for a lot of people, yoga, exercise. There's something also called the 5-minute journal. Now, journaling has had a resurgence and has shown up in the research as super helpful lately. But the 5-minute journal is a quickie. So in 5 minutes, you write down, what are you grateful for? 3 things. And then if you do this at the start of the day, you do 3 things that would make today great if I did them or got them done. And then you do 3 affirmations for yourself. And as we know, gratitude is a great practice, and just doing those 3 things you're grateful for can shift your mood a lot. So that's the 5-minute journal. Humor is also a great idea. And sometimes if let's say we're an anxious person, or I don't know if you guys saw the movie Up, but there was kind of a Debbie Downer character. So if we use characters and just say, oh, here's my worry wart, hello, Fred, or whoever, we can start to interact with that character. Making space for emotions and just checking in with yourself on how you're doing in your emotional center. That is huge too. So sometimes, for example, we're just feeling tired, but if we go under the fatigue, we notice I'm a little sad too. So that might tell us, the news hit me, or the family stress, or, I'm dealing with some grief. That doesn't have to be a deal breaker for you functioning, but it can inform you on how you might take it easy with yourself and not pile too much extra in your day. Resilience reminders, I've handled stuff before, I'll handle it again. And just thinking, when I wanted to make some changes in the past, how did I do it? What was my first step? That's usually you have a lot of good experience behind you. Rituals that center and calm you, resetting every now and then. Of course, that's what our weekends, hopefully that's what we can find, is some of that time to kind of feel like you're starting again or you're refreshed. That's resetting, and we need more of that when we're under a lot of stress. The other idea is working at home can be a challenge to actually stopping working, so shutting it down at the end of the day. All right, and here's an example too of the best case, worst case, most likely. This can be a tool you use with clients. And in motivational interviewing, we would ask permission, would it be all right if I share a tool with you for anxiety? So it sometimes can help people to name what's the best case of this challenge, what's the worst case, and what's most likely. Shall we try that? And then you see what they, how they're doing after. Because one of the things with anxiety is when our brain keeps circling and going over it and going over it. And that can be helpful with some of the working with thoughts exercises. Okay, then we have here the eagle meditation, and I love these types of meditations, so I'll show this at the end. But let's take some time now for questions, and if anyone wants to run anything by us. And we'll come back. I'm going to stop the sharing for a moment. We're going to do an eagle meditation. And just, just to summarize what we've talked about today, anxiety is normal. Self-care and stress management becomes even more important. The tools, they make sense to us, but we actually have to practice them and make them your own. A lot of times that will involve writing. That helps the brain get it into its system, and it then is able to do it automatically. After you do this a half dozen times, it starts doing it automatically, which is cool. How you hold it, look at your framework, see if it's up to date. Does it need any tweaking about life, about challenge, about adversity? Make sure you have a good amount of body-based tools, and think about your active and passive coping. Now we need our passive coping. I play silly solitaire games, but that's passive coping. And I just, I've started to do a practice where I check in first and take a breath. What I realized lately is sometimes I'm just tired, and I could probably just go to bed at that point, So that was good to know. We can keep discovering things if we keep working on this. All right, and we hope that this will add to your resilience and the muscles that make you stronger for dealing with challenges. Stop in the share. And let's take some time for questions.
Thank you so much, Denise.
Sure.
So yeah, people can either choose to type their questions in the chat, and I will monitor that, or feel free to come off mute. I have enabled participants to come off mute if you would like to share your question.
And let me just check some of the questions that are in here already in chat. And thank you guys for naming some of the things you're dealing with. One question was raised about vaxxed and unvaxxed, and this is huge.
Source of stress, yeah.
Yes, a huge challenge for all of us, I would say. And yes, so yes, let me see here. I'm just trying to get a feel for this. Okay, so this is a really good example of when we have different perspectives, different opinions. Everybody is different. We'll say this, with stress management too, that what works for one person may not work for another. It's really hard to understand if you're on the vax side, why someone might not choose to be vaccinated. And there's a lot of challenges for frontline workers. I work in a hospital, so I have that awareness. I'm not in ICU as some of my colleagues are, but this has been going on a long time there. I had an interesting thing happen where I think it's easy to get kind of hard about it. And some of the people that have been working with a long time are, pretty tired, pretty fatigued. And we're try to be understanding. But, I did listen to, I tried to listen to why there was a podcast on why some people choose not don't choose vaccination. And that was just helpful to understand, there's a lot of different reasons. I might just assume this is just because of ignorance or blah, blah, or they don't understand science, or I can, and it's interesting to me because I do have some people that I think are smart people that are choosing that. So that kind of made me try to keep open to the diversity of experience. So thank you for that topic. That is the subject of a whole other webinar. And it brings up a lot of communication challenges that could come up. So, that's communication is a big stress management tool. And we didn't cover that. That could be a whole webinar in itself. But a lot of times, just as a patient navigator, you would not want to fix someone. You would not want to tell someone what to do. This is another area where we might not be able to, force someone to do something that we think makes sense. But we might just say, a lot of times we'll have to be just repeating the practices, keep the mask on. Sometimes people just feel like when they talk, they have to lower their mask, in our setting. So we have to just remind them of protocol. You can, whenever people are challenged, motivational interviewing is a great tool. It's basically being curious about what is their situation. What does this mean to them? What are their concerns if they don't, get vaccinated, or for their family if they don't, or if they get COVID? Those might be possible questions. But it is an extra stress for everyone, for sure. Any further questions on that?
No, but I think I'm Ivy Huntston. I'm at CDPHE with Cancer Prevention and Early Detection, and most people on this call are funded grantees. So our grantees have the stress of working and the anxiety of working with clients. And right now it's a busy season for everyone to also be writing continuing applications, to be writing budgets, to know that, I think Chris is on the call. Chris and I can be a little more anxious with deadlines as well. So it's a combination of actual workday and then that expectation from the state business of having to do things as well. So I think Chris and I would acknowledge that it will become a little bit more stressful in the coming months. And pardon?
With some of your deadlines?
With some of our deadlines, and to really, we all try to be very transparent with deadlines and open, but to have communication back and forth with us, because priority is your patients, but then priority is getting funded again. So there's going to be a lot of collisions, right, Chris? And Chris and I, before this, said this training should just be for me and her right now. Nobody else gets to
and
be
we
on
could
it.
have just done experiential work the whole time instead of blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But, part of what I noticed for myself with that, Ivy and Chris and everyone with high stress, plus you're a sensitive person, plus you're a caring person if you're in this field. Just making sure, not to add more. Sometimes I would, in the past, I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to also do that big project while I have that deadline, No. Even doing a webinar like this takes some extra, gigabytes. So, just making sure I don't have 6 clients after this, or, so making sure to do your self-care, do extra stuff for yourself, in the busy season. Now, that's the hardest thing, but the Dalai Lama was asked, what do you tell people when they're too busy to meditate? And he said, meditate more. So, these are the times you're kind of running a marathon. You're in a stress marathon. And, if you're doing grants, that is huge, right? There's always more, it always takes more time. And a lot of times there's some of the challenges we have, they take more than we expect. That's part of the trouble is you can't always predict the time they'll take or the energy they'll take. So that's a great practice. Ivy is saying transparency, being able to say, I am so exhausted today, or I had so much trouble with the printer, of course, when I needed it most, or whatever. So thank you for bringing that up. Anything else there? But just, the other piece around it is just being sure to acknowledge yourself at the end of a period like that. Often we're just running to the next thing. And so that's a big piece in some of the counseling and coaching I do, is just to say, hey, how are you going to reward yourself for getting through that grant, for getting it in on time? How are you going to celebrate, a big continuing ed thrust that you did in addition to working full time, or just some of your personal family work that you did while helping so many people.
Denise, there's one question that came through in the chat from Constance about fatigue versus stress.
Yes.
So she said, my spouse has had complications from a knee replacement from over a year now. He has been unable to walk since March. We are both tired, thinking we are handling it well. However, what might be key pieces I should watch for?
That's a great question. Thank you, Constance. And, let's just review that sleep is a huge piece of stress management. And it's also very important now in health. We have noticed, or the latest research, Tom Rath has some books out on health, and it's RATH, and it's his first book on it was Eat, Move, Sleep. And he talks about different practices to help all of those areas: diet, regular movement, and sleeping. But he put sleep as the most important of those three, which kind of, is surprising, but that's what some of the research is pointing to, because if we sleep poorly, then we will oftentimes eat poorly or blow off our, healthy eating, and we'll say, I'm not going to the gym today. So there's the way they work together. But Constance, I would look at sleep, and the whole thing of that challenge of walking. If you can't walk, there's a lot that's created challenge-wise in terms of that obstacle, because maybe for your husband that was a stress management tool, was walking or exercising. So, one of the things I might do there, well, let's say, so distinguishing between fatigue and stress. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish, but, some tools we've been talking about is rate your stress, do the 4 steps, just doing step 1 to see what is on your plate, right? That just this knee challenge alone is a big one. Okay. And for your husband, that's going to be a main thing there. And it's going to tie in with health, and it's going to tie in with stress management. Having fatigue and, let's say, sleeping challenges, that would be one of the first things to look at and, have a focused approach to, if you're sleep challenged, spend a month, spend some weeks trying to get it managed. And there's sleep hygiene tips. If you email me, I can send you some. and you probably have heard of these. But I would rate your stress. I would do step 1 to just see what is on your plate. And then maybe you can both sit down together. Your husband could do step 2. What is in my control about this, me, and what's not? My recovery has not been as fast as I wanted. That would be not in your control, right? There's some kind of physical issue here that we didn't expect. I'm still working out things with the doctor. These would all be things you can't control, perhaps. But what is your control in your control? This is true for all of us, by the way, and it's usually true for every problem. Stress management is always in your control. How you think about things, your attitude, right? That's in your control. It's not necessarily a problem. This whole thing of saying, I'm just going to think positive, that doesn't always work, right? And it's not a problem to have worries, but if they're just constant, that's where we would use step 4, which is in your worksheets, and it's a 3-step process of working with thoughts. So let's say we're really in a doom and gloom place, and we say, oh no, I'll never walk again, Well, we want to work with that thought, right? And we would challenge it and say, okay, sometimes it's pointing out a truth. So we could say, yeah, feels like I will never walk, or maybe I won't get back to my old way, certainly not as quickly. So we acknowledge the truth of it, but we, instead of just going like, the Debbie Downer, we say, this is sure challenging, and good thing that, we're working on it, or good thing I have a good attitude, or good thing I have my faith, so there's ways that we make the thought reflect the truth, but perhaps have a bit more hope at the end of it.
Thank you, Denise. And I want to make sure we have time for one more question, because I know Andre had a question. And did you want to unmute and share?
Thank you, Constance. I hope that was helpful, and email me if you have any further questions on that. All right, one more question.
Yeah, I wanted to see if they wanted to unmute because they had a hand up.
And let me make sure there's nothing else in our chat box here.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, Andre, feel free to pop it into the chat box if we missed you. You should be able to unmute now. Oh, hi, Andre. I don't know if I can. Oh, there you are.
A ver, María, ¿se me puede ayudar a traducir esta pregunta? Estamos hablando de la ansiedad, estrés, depresión. Quiero entender un poco la diferencia de estas 3 palabras, porque ¿con cuál se empieza primero? ¿Con la ansiedad? ¿O después viene el estrés? Y después te sientes deprimido. No sé cuál, con qué se empieza primero. Quisiera entender un poco más de esto, si tienen algunos minutos más.
That's a good question. Yes. And if people want to stay a few minutes longer, it may extend a bit, but I'll try to wrap up time in a timely manner. But Andre, that is a great question. The short answer I'd say is, noticing with stress, where do you tend to go? So, we're all different. Sometimes we will have thoughts that speed up and worry, and we're just going in circles, that would be more anxiety when it's speedy, when it's pressured. Depression, your mood goes lower, you're maybe feeling some sadness. And there's a difference between feeling sad and feeling depressed, just like there's levels of anxiety. And again, these are all normal. You're not supposed to have zero anxiety or zero stress. No, if you're human, you're going to have some level of these emotions, okay? But when, and then emotions also, just so we know, they're like the weather. They come and go. So having tools for that and just noticing, oh, I'm feeling a little sad today. I'm feeling a little worried today. You know, those are normal feelings. Stress, again, goes up and down depending on what we're working with and depending on how we manage stress. So what we know is for our health, we need to do that regularly. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything else to be aware of. You know, the thought exercise that's part of step 4 in the 4 steps that is in your resource list works with how to work with emotions, just to kind of breathe with them, give them a little room. Again, they sometimes are pointing out good things to know. If we have some sadness or some worry, sometimes that's based on what's true. And it can help us cope with it, help us take care of things in a way that creates safety. For example, if we're worried about something, or if we're sad about something, we might have to have a conversation with someone, or it may just be an anniversary of someone that's passed, and that's an appropriate feeling. Whenever you feel your feelings are getting in the way of you functioning well, that's where you might seek support. And the research will show that if it's gotten to, maybe when I talk with people at work, for example, some of my patients, I'll have them rate their stress generally in the last 2 weeks, 1 to 10, 10 is high, rate their anxiety, rate their depression, rate their frustration. So stress as one thing, but those 3 areas as main emotional stress zones, okay? If anything's above a 5, that usually means, there might be more to discuss here, right? But if it gets up to 7, that's where we would say that's starting to get into chronic stress. And that's bad for your body. And it usually starts to interfere with your best functioning. So that's where therapy might be useful for people. And certainly the tools, I think all of us, it's really easy to get up to those levels of stress these days. So making sure you have some tools, you might need some new ones at times. The old ones stop working as well sometimes. So we're always being asked to get better or to update things. Excellent question. Thank you. Did that help?
Gracias. Sí, ayudó mucho, gracias.
Excellent. Great.
All right, so I know we are at time. I wanted to thank you all so much for taking this time for yourself, to fill your own cup, because we know you are doing so much for all your clients out there. So I will follow up with resources for you, and we will make this recording available in a few days. And thank you again, and enjoy your afternoon. Oh, Denise has one more thing.
More
and
thing.
Thank you to Denise and Maria too.
We could go on, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could.
I'll just say here, there's a note about working with patients who you can't really help their problems or they're really struggling. And just to say, do we see our patients as broken, or do we see that they have strengths we may not even know about? Just as we might have to rise to the occasion of a big challenge, we can maybe just trust that they have the strength to figure things out, but it is not your job. I just want to say that again, it is not your responsibility. And being a safe person to talk to helps so much. So thanks again for your work, as Erin said. Wonderful to see everyone. Thanks for coming today. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Maria. Take care.